family, and what a unique opportunity today to know that and to share that. And for those of you who are, you've been here a long time, this, it's like I'm about to introduce someone you know and love. And for those of you, I'm so thrilled with all of our new members, you don't know. So what I did is I asked Reverend Kahn to kind of give me a bio so that I could introduce her. But what I want to say personally is that I just think Spirit is so unique in scheduling, and it's so interesting to me that Reverend Karen would be giving the talk today, because for me, she represents that fulcrum point of the 20 plus years, and we're about to celebrate 30 years of our history and the staff here, as well as moving into the future and where we are now. So, to be official, Karen came to the Chico Church of Religious Science in the early 1990s looking for a spiritual home. Liking what she heard, she started taking Science of Mind classes and enjoyed deepening her spiritual practice with other like-minded explorers. She liked the social and volunteer opportunities and continued to serve the church by singing in the choir, women's song, and Dolly Mamas. For years, she also served as the choir librarian and videographer. When her children were younger, she helped organize and update the youth department, writing curriculum and publishing a youth newsletter. After serving as a practitioner for several years, she went into deeper spiritual study and became a licensed staff minister in 2003 and was ordained in 2010. Reverend Karen continues to write for Creative Thought magazine, and she has designed and published our weekly e-bulletin for years. After our founding pastor, Dr. Carolyn, retired, Reverend Karen served as interim minister here until, for some reason, I showed up, and she has been instrumental in the organization, and administration of the center, and she has been doing some very interesting things since she left the staff and the center, and yet still being of service to us with her communication and graphic skills up until October and up until what I'm sure she will share with you. So it gives me a privilege to introduce today's guest speaker, Reverend Karen Kahn. Good morning.
Good morning.
I would like to start by saying that Reverend Louis Gates and Reverend Michael Benson have been dear, dear friends and colleagues of mine for many years, and I work with them weekly on their e-blast. And I share in the grief that we're experiencing here because of Louis' transition. I want to read something that was given to me just the other day by my prayer partner. It was a Facebook post by Jeff Doucette. I'm afraid I don't know the background or the person to whom he's referring, but it moved me when I first read it, and it seems even more sweet now. A few people have asked me what he died from, and I have to laugh because that concept is so far out of our lexicon, I almost don't understand it. He died because he tasted sweet source, looked around at his loved ones, and saw we were well, and decided to fly. He died because he was ready to expand, to grow into something so magnificent, his work will ratchet up 1,000 notches. And lives will be and are being and have been transformed. He died because he was ready. He died in easy comfort, pure joy, and filled me with it so I would know and share it with his loved ones. That quote is true about Louis Lagomarsino Gates. And I acknowledge his transition as I speak today on the topic of phase change. Yeah, very funny, Louis. I can hear him laughing, can't you?
I wanted to pull in some scientific information that all then relate to a metaphysical interpretation and how that applies to our lives. I'm going to incorporate some examples from my family and look at how my reactions either serve me or hinder me. I trust that that will be instructive and helpful to you. Phase change. Scientifically, the definition of phase change is the change of matter from one state to another, as in solid to liquid to gas. How that change happens is what we're dealing with today. To help explain the science and to give us a way to think about how we approach this idea of phase change, I've asked a friend to help me. Your former choir director, who also happens to be an educator and trainer of industrial and systems engineers, Larry Sill.
For 33 years now, I have worked for a company that designs and manufactures industrial vacuum systems. Vacuum is used everywhere in the world in about every industry you can imagine. Industries like food packaging. When you go to Costco and you see that side of beef that has that film sucked around it, those are our pumps. Aerospace. The composites used now in an airplane is incredible. The wings, the fuselage, if you saw the America's Cup, that vertical wing, that's made under vacuum. You mock up composites, pull a vacuum on them, they become tighter and stronger. The use of vacuum in developing and making exotic metals like titanium and zirconium. Again, titanium is a metal that is lighter than any of its cousins. It's stronger than steel, and it's largely used in aircraft manufacturing now. Many of you may have seen bikes that are raced. They're made of titanium. You can lift them with one finger. They're stronger than steel. The semiconductor industry is done entirely under vacuum. The manufacturing of a wafer and a chip, it's all done under deep vacuum. So what is vacuum? I could go on. You don't want me to. You'd catch up on your sleep, though. Vacuum is essentially the absence of pressure. Deep space is the only place where there is a perfect vacuum. Our Earth is surrounded by a blanket of atmosphere. You've heard that nature abhors a vacuum? Well, it's true. Here on our planet, our atmosphere will instantly fill a void created by vacuum, just like light will instantly fill darkness. So it's quite an engineering feat to create a vacuum on this planet. You know, one reason we have this International Space Station orbiting the Earth is so that many scientific research projects can be carried out in the presence of this perfect vacuum of space. But one key use of vacuum is to phase change materials. How's that done? When you change a material from one of its phases, as Karen mentioned, solid to liquid to vapor, and there's actually one more, that's done because you've changed something. And on our planet, it's heat. So, how is that done? At atmospheric pressure, ice phase changes to water at any temperature above 32 degrees Fahrenheit. We call that melting because heat is added. At atmospheric pressure, water phase changes, or boils as we know it, at 212 degrees Fahrenheit to steam, which is vapor, and that's done by adding heat. In fact, there are a number of phases in which a substance can exist. You know of these three? There's one more called the plasma phase, where you add electricity to a gas, basically, and create plasma. So heat's the only way to phase change, correct? There's no other way to do that. But it is if we assume that the pressure around the compound is constant, our atmosphere. Is there any other way to phase change? What if we change the pressure? I'm going to show you a video clip of how this is done under vacuum. Karen will then relate this to her talk about how we can do some things about phase changing. I'm going to stand up here so that I can explain what you're going to see. This video was done by a competitor of mine, but it's good. What's going to happen is you're going to see a small jar filled with water. It's going to be put in a bell jar, and a vacuum will be applied by a vacuum pump. In fact, we're going to go all the way from liquid to vapor to solid, all under vacuum. It's moving. Okay, what we have is a vacuum pump down here, and here is a platform with a rubber seal, and water's being added to this glass, and this bell jar is being put down here. Karen, hold on just a second if you would for me. You'll see a couple of gauges. This one will measure the pressure inside of this chamber. This one measures the atmospheric pressure. I'll just show you that in a moment. What will happen is this person will open a valve, allowing the vacuum in the pump to evacuate the atmosphere in this chamber. This is at room temperature. So you'll watch this gauge as the vacuum is applied. It reaches a point where the atmosphere above the water is so low that it leaps into a vapor phase. That's called boiling. That's at room temperature. The vacuum is creating the phase change. Okay, stop there for a second, Karen. So we've reached pretty deep vacuum in here. The water that wants to leap into a vapor has done that. You can touch this with your hand. But now another thing occurs as we continue to reduce the pressure on this matter, and that is it freezes at room temperature. So they take a moment here and they show you the beaker and the ice forming and so forth. We're under deep vacuum. She will turn the vacuum off and add atmosphere back to this chamber so that this bell jar will release. It's just held there by pressure. And what you have is a jar full of ice. Well, what's left is full of ice, and no temperature has changed. We've changed the pressure. That's all.
Okay. So Larry and I have had a lot of change in our lives over the last couple of years, as I imagine many of you have. And how we've chosen to approach the situations in our lives has empowered us. As Reverend Kathy teaches us, our daily spiritual practice keeps us prayed up for when the rough times surface. Reading spiritual material has always been a tool of mine, and I have a new book to share with you. The title may be a little off-putting, but I will say the information is right along the lines of what we teach in Science of Mind. It's just focused on a specific topic that may or may not interest you. The book is called Spiritual Divorce by Debbie Ford. She describes how life provides many opportunities to awaken to our divine nature. Whether it's through divorce or job loss or moving, financial downturn, pain, health challenges, these motivators can break down walls that have kept old behaviors intact, behaviors that may no longer serve us. And if you've experienced all of these things at one time, like we have, you can be sure that every wall you've ever created will be obliterated. Pain, whether it's physical or emotional, forces us to seek answers from places that we haven't looked before. Like the example of boiling water without the commonly known method of heating, the belief that there's only one way to do something can keep us stuck and limit our choices and our enjoyment of life. One of the reasons we come to a center like this is because we're open to looking at things differently. If we can look at painful situations and see the changes they've created with new eyes, we can get a broader perspective and not only ease our suffering, but we can recognize the power of our thought to create future changes without pain and struggle. It's been said that you'll learn more in 10 days of agony than in 10 years of contentment. Debbie Ford relays an analogy about the wake-up call of pain. Imagine being sound asleep when you're suddenly awakened by the smoke alarm in your bedroom. Startled, you jump out of bed, run to the closet, pick up a baseball bat. You smash the alarm to smithereens until it stops ringing. But then instead of looking for the fire, you put the bat back in the closet, crawl back into bed, and go back to sleep. Pain is an alarm, a warning signal that something is burning. If we tend to our pain, lean into it, and ask it, what is it there to teach us? We can be led to a place of understanding, release, and peace. If we don't take the opportunity to look at ourselves and heal our pain, we're likely to repeat our mistakes and continue in our discomfort. This book lists 7 laws of spiritual divorce, but they work for anything in our life for which we seek a new, fresher, healthier perspective. So they really could be named the 7 laws for spiritual growth. The first is the law of acceptance. Recognize that everything is as it should be. Accept that the painful situation we're in now is for our highest good. And know that things are not always as they seem. We need to separate facts from our story around it. The opposite of acceptance is denial. Denial ties in our stories to the facts and blinds us to the possibilities. Debbie Ford has an acronym for denial. Didn't even notice I am lying. When we build a story around the facts of a situation, we could very well be forming a big, fat, hairy lie about it. With judgment about a person or situation being wrong or unfair, I am disturbed. I can't find serenity. As I accept the person or the circumstance exactly as it's supposed to be, I can find peace. If I argue with the circumstance, if I cling to what's wrong or unfair about it, I create an illusion of reality that narrows my own vision and limits my choices. The only way to boil water is to heat it. End of story. But not the end of the facts. As we focus on the story we've told ourselves, we're blind to the entire truth. We start to blame others for our problems and fall into victim mentality. The cycle gets worse as we feel more and more powerless and resentful. We're seeing things through a distorted lens. In my life right now, I have the experience of my sons not really responding to me. That's a fact. I can and occasionally have